My office, usually a sanctuary of controlled chaos, felt particularly still that afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a stark contrast to the heavy feeling settling in my chest. You see, there are moments in life that feel utterly ordinary, but looking back, you realize they were just the quiet before a different kind of storm entirely. For months, I've carried this story, a weight I need to share. What happened 2 decades ago shattered my childhood, but what happened just last month, well, it was undeniable proof that karma, in its own slow and deliberate way, truly exists. Growing up, my older sister, Ashley, was the golden child. Everything she did sparkled in our parents' eyes. Honor roll? We'd throw parties. Me doing the same? Just a nod, and they'd return to the television. Ashley got piano lessons, dance classes, a bedroom twice the size of mine. New clothes every season, while I wore hand-me-downs from cousins I barely knew. My mother, Susan, constantly compared us. Ashley had perfect posture, flawless skin, and an uncanny ability to charm anyone within 5 minutes. Me? I was the quiet one, preferring books to people, studying to socializing. By the time I was 11 and Ashley was 15, the favoritism was so blatant even the neighbors commented. The worst part was how Ashley weaponized her status. She'd break rules, then blame me when consequences loomed. Once, she crashed my father Robert's car joyriding with friends. She told our parents I'd left the garage door open, letting someone steal it. They believed her instantly. Another time, she stole money from Susan's purse for concert tickets and claimed I'd taken it for candy. 6 months without allowance. But nothing compared to that autumn when I was 11. Ashley had started running with a rough crowd at her high school, kids who skipped classes, smoked behind the gym, talking about things that made me uncomfortable. One Friday, she snuck out her window to meet these friends at a warehouse party across town. I watched her climb down the trellis from my bedroom, debating whether to tell. Something felt wrong, she'd been so secretive and jumpy all week. But telling on her would make me the family traitor. So I stayed silent, trying to sleep. Around midnight, sirens woke the neighborhood. Red and blue lights flashed through my curtains. I heard shouting, car doors slamming, and Susan screaming Ashley's name. Racing downstairs, I found my parents in the driveway, talking to officers. Ashley sat in the back of a police car, mascara streaking her face. The party had been raided. Alcohol, illegal substances, stolen property. Ashley wasn't directly involved in the theft, but she was there and had been drinking. At 15, she was arrested. My parents drove to the station at 2 a.m. to retrieve her. The ride home was silent, save for Susan's quiet sobs. Ashley stared out the window. Robert gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. I sat in the back seat, terrified and confused, wondering how we'd gotten here. Instead of addressing Ashley's actions, my parents needed a different target. The next morning, Susan cornered me in the kitchen while I poured cereal. She asked if I knew about the party. Truthfully, I admitted watching Ashley sneak out, explaining I'd been scared to say anything. Susan's expression hardened. She called Robert in. Together, they sat me down and explained that I was a bad influence on Ashley. My jealousy and resentment had pushed her towards rebellion. If I'd been a better sister, more supportive, Ashley wouldn't have sought validation from dangerous friends. My silence proved I wanted her to fail. I tried defending myself, bringing up years of favoritism and blame. Robert cut me off, saying I was making excuses. Ashley stood in the doorway, saying nothing to defend me, just watching with empty eyes as my world crumbled. Within a week, they'd arranged for me to live with my Uncle David and Aunt Eleanor in another state. They had no children and ran a small farm 3 hours away. My parents called it a fresh start away from negative influences, but everyone knew the truth. They were removing me to protect Ashley's image. The morning I left, Susan packed my belongings into 2 suitcases. She confiscated my cell phone, claiming I didn't need distractions. Robert barely looked at me as he loaded my bags into David's truck. Ashley hugged me,
Goodbye,
whispering an apology that felt hollow. Uncle David and Aunt Eleanor were kind people who worked hard and expected the same. They gave me a small room, explained the daily chores, and told me education was my ticket to a better future. Living with them was like entering a different universe. No favoritism, no drama, just honest work and clear expectations. School became my refuge. Without a phone or social media, I poured every ounce of energy into my studies. My grades climbed to exceptional. Teachers noticed my dedication, recommending advanced classes. By high school, I was taking college-level courses and participating in debate club. Public speaking terrified me initially, but I channeled my anger into persuasive arguments. My parents called David occasionally, but never asked to speak with me directly. During holidays, they sent generic cards with $20 bills. No visits, no real interest. Ashley sometimes texted, brief messages, but they felt obligatory. Years passed. I graduated high school as valedictorian, earning a full scholarship to a prestigious university. David and Eleanor attended, beaming with pride. My parents sent a card. Ashley didn't acknowledge it. College felt like shedding an old skin. Nobody knew about my past or the family who'd rejected me. I could reinvent myself. For the first time, I wasn't the unwanted sister or the scapegoat daughter. I was just a freshman. I majored in political science, planning for law school. The subject fascinated me, how systems of power worked, how law shaped society, how justice could be wielded. Professors encouraged my passion, keeping me after class to discuss legal theories. My sophomore year, I joined the mock trial team almost by accident. A flyer caught my eye. Standing in front of judges, arguing cases, seemed impossible for someone who'd spent years trying to be invisible. But something deeper pushed me. Maybe it was anger at never having someone defend me. Maybe a desire to stand up against injustice. Whatever it was, I showed up to tryouts and delivered an opening statement that surprised even myself. The team captain, a senior named Benjamin Miller, pulled me aside. He said I had raw talent but needed refinement. My arguments were passionate but lacked structure. He offered to mentor me personally. Benjamin became the older brother I never had. He taught me to control my voice, use silence, read reactions. We spent countless hours in empty classrooms. My skills sharpened dramatically. We competed in regional tournaments, then nationals. Standing in those courtrooms, even fake ones, gave me purpose. Every objection sustained, every witness impeached, every verdict in our favor felt like validation. I wasn't just good. I was exceptional. The real breakthrough came during my junior year at the National Mock Trial Championship in Atlanta. We faced the defending champions. I delivered the closing argument, weaving evidence and testimony into a narrative that left the courtroom silent. When they announced our victory, Benjamin lifted me off the ground. That night, at the team celebration, Benjamin toasted, saying I had the brightest future of anyone he'd ever coached. His words meant more than any praise I'd received from my parents. Between mock trial competitions, I secured internships. The first was at a small family law practice, showing me the human side of legal work. My second, at a larger corporate firm, was intellectually challenging. The senior partners noticed my attention to detail. The summer before senior year, I interned at the county public defender office. This changed everything. Clients were often poor, often minorities, facing charges from petty theft to serious felonies. Many had been failed by every system meant to help them. Hearing their stories, I saw pieces of my own experience reflected back, people blamed for circumstances beyond their control. The injustice ignited something fierce. My supervisor, a veteran public defender named Sarah Choi, recognized my passion. She started bringing me to court, letting me sit second chair, teaching me practical skills, how to talk to hostile witnesses, spot inconsistencies, humanize clients. One case stayed with me, a 17-year-old, Kevin Green, charged with armed robbery. The evidence seemed damning. Sarah let me dig deeper. I spent weeks investigating. I discovered the eyewitness had initially identified someone else before the photo lineup. The stolen items were planted in his backpack by a cousin. 3 weeks before trial, the real perpetrator confessed. Watching the judge dismiss all charges against Kevin, seeing his mother collapse in grateful tears, feeling the weight of injustice lifted from an innocent kid's shoulders, that showed me exactly what kind of lawyer I wanted to become. Every achievement felt like building a fortress around myself, brick by brick, ensuring nobody could hurt me the way my family had. But more than that, it meant building a fortress that could shelter others from similar cruelty. Senior year was a blur of applications, interviews, and LSAT preparation. I scored in the 98th percentile, opening doors to top law schools. David and Eleanor helped me weigh the options, their pride evident. I chose a law school known for producing exceptional trial lawyers. Moving across the country was terrifying and exhilarating. Law school was brutal but rewarding. The first semester nearly broke me. Professors used the Socratic method relentlessly. One wrong answer, one moment of confusion, and you became an example. The pressure was tremendous. But I'd survived worse. Being sent away at 11, rebuilding my life from nothing, proving my worth without family support, it prepared me for this grind. I studied with obsessive focus. Legal writing was particularly challenging. Judges and attorneys want clear, concise arguments supported by precedent. Learning to strip away unnecessary language took months. My torts professor, a former appellate judge named Arthur Thompson, took an interest in my work, often using my case briefs as examples. Second year brought clinical programs. I joined the Criminal Defense Clinic, handling misdemeanor cases for indigent defendants. These weren't mock trials. Real people's futures depended on my performance. The first time I stood before a judge representing an actual client, my hands shook. But once I started speaking, muscle memory took over. I argued a motion to suppress evidence, citing Fourth Amendment violations. The judge granted it. Charges were dismissed. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt invincible. This was my calling. Every case was an opportunity to stand between vulnerable people and a system that often crushed them. Every victory proved I could protect others in ways nobody had protected me. Third year, I competed in the national trial competition. Our team advanced. In the championship round, I delivered what my coach called the finest closing argument she'd witnessed in 20 years. We won. My individual performance earned recognition from prestigious law firms. Job offers arrived before graduation. Big corporate firms offered six-figure salaries. But those positions felt hollow. I wanted to practice law that mattered. A mid-size firm specializing in criminal defense caught my attention. Serious cases, federal charges, homicide defense. Stellar reputations, challenging work, a culture emphasizing justice. I accepted their offer. Graduating in the top 5% of my class, I passed the bar exam on my first attempt. The transition from student to practicing attorney was jarring. Suddenly, decisions had real consequences. My first major case involved defending a man accused of securities fraud. Mountains of evidence. My client insisted he was innocent, framed by a business partner. Most attorneys thought the case unwinnable. I spent 3 months preparing, working 18-hour days, dissecting every document. Inconsistencies emerged. Timestamps didn't match. Email headers suggested forgery. Witnesses contradicted themselves. I built the defense. The trial lasted 4 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 days before returning a not guilty verdict. My client wept openly. Senior partners looked at me differently. I was a lawyer who delivered results. Working as an attorney was everything I hoped. Standing in courtrooms, arguing cases, protecting rights gave me purpose. I was good at my job. Partners promoted me faster than typical. By 28, I had my own office and a growing reputation. My caseload grew exponentially: corporate executives, medical professionals, small business owners. Each case unique. Some demanded aggression, others quiet negotiation. One difficult case involved a college professor accused of assaulting a student. Circumstantial evidence. Public opinion had already convicted him. News stations camped outside. His family received threats. I spent weeks interviewing witnesses, reconstructing the timeline. Holes appeared in the prosecution's narrative. Text messages showed the accuser threatening to ruin his career after a failing grade. Security footage placed him elsewhere. Medical evidence contradicted injury claims. Presenting this in court required delicate handling. I challenged the accuser's credibility without attacking a potential victim. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before acquitting my client. He collapsed in relief. The local paper, which had vilified him, barely mentioned the acquittal. Not all cases ended in victory. A young man charged with vehicular manslaughter hired me. The evidence was overwhelming. His family begged me to get him off completely, insisting he was a good kid who made one mistake. But the facts were undeniable, and the victims' families deserved justice. I negotiated a plea agreement, 18 months instead of the 15 years originally demanded. His mother screamed at me in the courthouse hallway. The victim's family said the sentence was too lenient. Nobody was satisfied, which probably meant the outcome was fair. These moral complexities weighed on me constantly. Defense attorneys get criticized for defending people, as if everyone doesn't deserve legal representation. My job wasn't to determine guilt or innocence, that was the jury's role. My job was ensuring the prosecution proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Between major trials, I handled dozens of smaller cases: drug possession, theft, assault. Many clients were poor, trapped in cycles of poverty and crime. Defending them meant fighting not just the charges, but the underlying inequalities. I volunteered at legal aid clinics on weekends. Single mothers facing eviction, immigrants dealing with deportation, elderly folks scammed. These cases paid nothing but mattered deeply. One Saturday, a woman named Maria brought her teenage son. He'd been arrested for spray painting graffiti. Minor charges, but he had a juvenile record for shoplifting. The prosecutor wanted to try him as an adult. I took the case pro bono. The kid was talented, his graffiti was artistic. I arranged for him to complete a mural program at a community center as alternative sentencing. The charges were reduced. 6 months later, Maria sent me a photo of his completed mural, a vibrant depiction of neighborhood history. He'd discovered a legitimate outlet for his talent, applying to art schools. One intervention had changed his trajectory. These moments reminded me why I became a lawyer, not for the high-profile victories or substantial paychecks, though those were nice. I practiced law to get people what I never had, someone willing to fight for them when the system seemed stacked against them. My reputation continued growing. Other attorneys referred their most challenging cases. Legal publications profiled my successes. Bar associations invited me to speak. During one conference in Denver, I delivered a keynote address about defending unpopular clients. The room was packed. I spoke about moral courage, professional ethics, and vigorous defense regardless of public opinion. The standing ovation felt surreal. A veteran attorney approached me, saying my presentation reminded him why he chose this profession. We talked for hours. He said true success meant maintaining integrity while achieving results, something many sacrificed. His words resonated. I had built my career on principles forged from childhood pain: never abandon someone in need, always fight injustice, stand up for those who cannot. These weren't just professional values, they were survival mechanisms that had transformed into a moral code. The firm made me partner during my 7th year. The youngest person to achieve that status. My office expanded. A secretary managed my schedule. The prestige was flattering but also strange. Sometimes late at night, working alone, I'd think about that 11-year-old girl packing suitcases while her family watched silently. If she could see me now, sitting in this leather chair, surrounded by symbols of professional achievement, would she believe it? Would she understand that survival was possible? That thriving was achievable? Partnership brought increased responsibilities. Mentoring junior associates, participating in management. I trained younger lawyers the way Benjamin Miller and Sarah Choi had trained me. One associate, a sharp young woman named Jessica Reyes, reminded me of myself. She worked harder than everyone, but carried visible pain. I took her under my wing. Jessica's first major trial was a disaster. She overprepared, stumbled, missed objections. The client was convicted, and she blamed herself. She came to my office afterward, crying, saying she wasn't cut out for this. I told her about my first real trial, how my hands shook, how I felt like a fraud. Failure wasn't the end. Every attorney lost cases. The question was whether you learned from mistakes or let them destroy your confidence. Jessica listened, wiping her eyes, and asked how I overcame the fear. I explained that fear never truly disappeared. You just learn to channel it into preparation and performance. The nervousness before trial meant you cared. Apathy was the real enemy. She went on to become an excellent trial attorney. Watching her grow reminded me that legacy mattered. Through all these years, contact with my parents remained minimal. They knew I'd graduated college and law school because David mentioned it during rare phone calls. They never reached out to congratulate me. Ashley had gotten married, had 2 kids, worked part-time. Her life seemed stable, unremarkable, based on David's sparse updates. David tried encouraging reconciliation. He'd call on holidays, updating me about family news I never asked for. Each update felt like hearing about strangers. Once, about 5 years into my law career, David mentioned Susan had asked about me during Thanksgiving. She wanted to know if I was happy, if I'd found someone special, if I ever thought about visiting. The questions came too late, filtered through a third party. I told David to tell her I was fine and left it at that. Eleanor took a different approach. She never pushed for reunification, but made sure I knew their door remained open. During difficult trials, she sent care packages. Her support came without conditions or expectations, the kind of unconditional love my parents never offered. The irony wasn't lost on me. The relatives who took me in out of obligation had become more family than the people who raised me for 11 years. David and Eleanor attended my law school graduation, my partnership celebration, every milestone that mattered. My parents sent cards with generic messages and occasional checks I never cashed. I wondered sometimes if they felt guilt or regret. Did Susan lie awake thinking about the daughter she sent away? Did Robert question their choice? Or had they convinced themselves that abandoning me was justified, necessary? The answers didn't really matter. Their feelings, whatever they were, didn't change the past or heal the damage. I had built a life without them. Carved out success from nothing. Become someone powerful and respected. Their absence had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. Then, last month, everything changed. My assistant buzzed my intercom, saying a potential client named Robert wanted to schedule a consultation. The last name sounded familiar, but I didn't make the connection until my assistant mentioned he was calling from my hometown. My stomach dropped. Robert was my father's name. Part of me wanted to refuse the meeting. Another part, the lawyer part, knew I needed to hear what he wanted. Professional curiosity won. I scheduled the consultation for Wednesday at 2 p.m. When Wednesday arrived, I prepared myself emotionally. My office felt like armor, filled with law books, diplomas, certificates. I wore my sharpest suit and practiced keeping my expression neutral. Whatever happened, I would remain professional. My assistant showed them into my office at 2 o'clock. My father, Robert, entered first. He looked older than I remembered, gray hair, deeper wrinkles, shoulders slightly stooped. My mother, Susan, followed, clutching her purse. They both froze when they saw me sitting behind the desk. The recognition on their faces was almost comical. Susan's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Robert's complexion went pale, then flushed red. I gestured toward the chairs across from my desk and asked them to sit. Susan finally found her voice, stammering my name like a question. I confirmed my identity and asked what legal matter brought them to my office. The professional distance in my tone clearly unsettled them. Robert cleared his throat several times before explaining. Ashley's husband had been arrested for embezzlement. He worked as an accountant and had been skimming funds for over 2 years. The evidence was substantial. The family was desperate for a skilled criminal defense attorney. Someone had recommended my firm without mentioning my name, and Robert had called requesting the best lawyer available. Sitting there, listening to them plead for help, was surreal. Susan cried, dabbing her eyes. Robert's voice cracked as he described how Ashley was struggling, how their grandchildren were confused and scared. They needed someone who could minimize the damage, negotiate a plea deal. I let them finish their entire explanation without interrupting. When silence fell, I asked specific questions about the case, exact charges, prosecution evidence, any statements to police. Robert answered everything, clearly surprised by my thoroughness and professionalism. After gathering all relevant information, I leaned back in my chair and delivered my assessment. The case was difficult, but not impossible. With the right strategy, I could potentially negotiate a reduced sentence. However, taking this case would require full transparency and trust between attorney and clients. I needed to know if they could handle that level of honesty. Susan nodded eagerly, saying they would do anything. Robert agreed, adding they trusted my expertise completely. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I stood up, walked to my window overlooking the city, and told them a story. I described an 11-year-old girl who got blamed for her sister's mistakes and sent away by parents too cowardly to address their golden child's problems. I explained how that girl survived through determination and hard work, building a career from nothing while her family forgot she existed. I detailed the years of silence, the absence of support, the complete abandonment. Susan started sobbing halfway through. Robert stared at his hands. When I finished, I turned to face them and asked a simple question: did they remember that girl? Robert whispered, yes. Susan couldn't speak through her tears. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and explained that I was that girl. The attorney they desperately needed was the daughter they threw away 15 years ago. The professional they sought to save their perfect daughter's family was the child they blamed for everything. The silence was deafening. Susan tried apologizing, words tumbling out. Robert attempted explaining their reasoning back then, how stressed they were, how they made mistakes. I held up my hand, stopping them both. I told them I would take the case, but on my terms. First, my fee would be standard rate, no family discount. Second, all communication would go through official channels. Third, they would never contact me personally about family matters. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. If they agreed, I would provide the best defense possible for Ashley's husband. They agreed immediately, too desperate to negotiate. I drafted a standard retainer agreement, explained the fee structure, and scheduled a meeting with Ashley and her husband. My assistant escorted them out while I sat at my desk, hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. The meeting with Ashley was equally awkward. She walked into my office with her husband, stopped dead when she saw me, and burst into tears. Her husband looked confused until she explained our relationship. To his credit, he seemed genuinely remorseful about everything, both his crimes and how my family had treated me. I worked the case for 6 weeks, building the strongest defense possible, despite my personal feelings. Professional ethics demanded my best effort. I negotiated with prosecutors, challenged evidence, and ultimately secured a plea agreement that reduced the sentence significantly. Ashley's husband would serve 18 months instead of the 5 years originally threatened, with probation following release. My parents attended every court appearance, watching me work, expressions mixing pride and regret. Ashley sent thank you cards, each one apologizing. I acknowledged them professionally but maintained emotional distance. After the sentencing hearing, my parents approached me in the courthouse hallway. Susan asked if we could really talk. Robert said they wanted to make amends. I looked at both of them for a long moment. I explained that forgiveness wasn't something they could request like a legal service. What they did caused damage that couldn't be fixed with apologies or explanations. Maybe someday I would be ready, but that day wasn't today. For now, the case was closed, legally and personally. Susan started crying again. Robert nodded slowly, accepting my decision. I walked away, out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sunshine. My phone buzzed with a text from David, asking how the case went. I smiled, typing back that justice had been served. The firm partners praised my work, noting my professionalism under difficult circumstances. Word spread about the family connection, but my reputation remained intact. Colleagues respected how I handled the situation with grace and competence. Last week, a package arrived at my office. Inside was a photo album Susan had apparently kept. Pictures of me at various ages, school photos, newspaper clippings about my achievements that David must have sent them. A note explained she'd followed my career from a distance, too ashamed to reach out, but proud nonetheless. I flipped through the album once, then stored it in my desk drawer. Perhaps someday I would appreciate the gesture, but right now it felt like too little, too late. My life had been built without their support, shaped by their absence. Success was mine alone, earned through years of hard work they never witnessed. Some people ask if I regret taking the case. The answer is complicated. Professionally, it was the right decision. Personally, it provided a kind of closure I didn't know I needed. Seeing my parents forced to acknowledge my worth, to depend on the daughter they discarded, satisfied something deep inside me. Ashley called my office yesterday, leaving a voicemail asking if we could meet for coffee. I haven't returned the call yet. Part of me wants to hear what she has to say. Another part remembers watching her stand silently while our parents blamed me for her mistakes. Uncle David says healing takes time and forgiveness is a personal choice. Aunt Eleanor reminds me that holding on to anger only hurts myself. They're probably right, but I'm not ready to let go of the walls I built. Those walls protected me when nobody else would. My career continues thriving. Cases keep coming, victories keep accumulating. Every courtroom appearance reminds me how far I've traveled from that scared 11-year-old girl packing suitcases while her family watched. That girl survived, studied, and became someone powerful enough to save the family that abandoned her. Whether I choose to rebuild relationships with my parents and sister remains uncertain. Right now, focusing on my work and the life I've created feels more important than revisiting painful history. The irony of their desperation leading them to my office still makes me smile sometimes. They sought the best criminal defense lawyer available and found the daughter they threw away. Justice works in mysterious ways, and sometimes the universe delivers exactly what people deserve. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What parts of your past still echo in your present, waiting for their own kind of justice?